Literature is a form of entertainment that rewards patience and rewards dedication, so much more than many other forms and many other media. If there's one thing I've learned during my years as a reader, if there is one thing I'm certain about when it comes to literature, is that it is so much better to read one book per week, per month, per year, by dedicating it the kind of attention that it deserves, rather than, reading 50 books because Goodreads will give you a badge on your profile if you do that. I think it's something we all discover by ourselves when we realize the pleasures you can get from certain very dense and maybe even difficult forms of literature, or when you realize what great fun it can be to reread a stimulating text and discovering always new things about it. Think about it as with board games. I'm a huge fan of board games, and there's nothing wrong with playing a lot of board games and having tons of them in your collection, but very often it's so much more pleasurable to play a single board game a lot of times and really getting to know the mechanics of the game, and how the many components interact with each other, and the many different strategies you can go about playing the game. And in that case, in that way, you can really appreciate the craftsmanship involved in the creation of that item. And it's completely the same with any other form of entertainment. It's the same with literature too. So welcome to this big crazy extravaganza with 5 reviews of books that have nothing to do with each other all together, because I thought it would be silly to film like 5 short reviews. I'll talk about shit at the end of the video. I already talked about too much stuff. Let's go with the books. The first one I'm going to talk about is Nursery Crimes by Waldman. Waldman is a writer I discovered very recently. She's the wife of Michael Chabon, arguably my favorite writer alive today, and she is an amazing writer in her own right. I recently read her latest novel, Love and Treasure, which is an amazing, heartbreaking novel. Such a masterpiece, if you ask me. It's a historical novel filled with so many different perspectives and with different events intertwining with each other. You basically get 3 historical novellas wrapped inside an awesome burrito of a novel. Here, Nursery Crimes, completely different kind of book. That one is heavier, it has more heft to it. This one is a much lighter crime novel, and it's the first installment in a long series, so if you're hooked when you read Nursery Crimes, you'll have lots more stuff to enjoy. And the main character in this book is so compelling, I'm sure I'll check out the other books in the series. Besides being an amazing and hilarious crime novel set in the Los Angeles of, movie stars and VIPs, it also features some very interesting reflections on motherhood. Waldman has written countless non-fiction books on the topic, non-fiction essays and a few collections on the topic. And some of the positions the main character has concerning motherhood, she's not a perfect mother. Some of them may appear slightly controversial, but she is such a compelling and relatable character, and she manages to be completely kick-ass while again being fully relatable and while looking completely believable. I really appreciated it. If you're looking for an hilarious crime novel, very short, very light in a way, Waldman isn't afraid to dwell a little bit in, the dark areas of motherhood, for instance, of personal relationships, to talk about disturbed people and the pits you can fall into if you're not careful enough as a human being. But it's a light read overall. If you're looking for that kind of book, this is a safe bet. Another awesome book that should deserve a full review really is Double Take by Gregory Dowling. A man I should probably tell you I know personally. He's a friend of mine, but he writes so well. He's a great thriller writer, and he is such a hilarious writer. He has that kind of very British kind of sardonic, subtle humor, but so many times during Double Take I was just, bent in half laughing. This is a novel of international intrigue filled with so many twists. They just keep coming, and the closer you get to the end of the book, the thicker the twists keep coming. And as someone who was raised on a steady diet of Goosebumps books, twists are a quintessential part of the narrative experience, if you ask me, so this was exactly the kind of book for me. The thing I love the most about Double Take is that it manages to be, on the one hand, a satire and in some way a critique of the whole idea of, international thrillers with these kind of international political settings, while also being very much a thriller of that sort itself. It manages to make fun of the genre while being part of it and while being a convincing example of that genre. This novel is sadly out of print, but if you can get your hands on a second-hand copy of it, by all means do read it, it's great. A thriller, another thriller by Dowling you can actually, get, it's in print, is Ascension, another beautiful and hilarious and very clever thriller set. That one is set in the Venice of the 18th century, very different kind of novel, but it's also amazing. I filmed a review of it, there are many links to all sorts of stuff in the description box, and the sequel to Ascension, by the way, will be out in a few days. I'm currently reading it, expect a review soon. Moving on, I'm going to talk about two short story collections, which are How to Carry Bigfoot Home by by Chris Tarry, and Stories for Daytime and Some for Night by Loory. Story for nighttime and some for the day. I suck. Now, I found out about both authors because some of their stories were featured in Invaders, 22 Tales from the Outer Limits of Literature, which is an amazing anthology of science fiction short stories by a beautiful cast of all-star writers. There's Monstro by Junot Diaz in there, there's a story by Jonathan Lethem in there's stories by these two guys, there are stories by George Saunders in there, so many brilliant stories. That's a collection you should totally get. How about these two? How to Carry Bigfoot Home is a weird one. It's in many ways a collection of so-called literary fiction, and many of these stories are peopled with the kind of pathetic characters who focus a little bit on their own flaws and lead terrible and miserable lives and can't really get out of that cycle of misery. In so many ways, the stories in here call to mind George Saunders and his short stories. Much like Saunders, Tarry too uses genre tropes and genre elements inside his stories, except that probably some of these do fall much more neatly inside certain genre categories. And there's, for instance, an amazing adventure story about hunting for a sea monster. Now, I'm a little bit fed up with that kind of, short stories about the common life of pathetic people. Probably I read too much George Saunders, but if you like Saunders, if you like that kind of story that dwells and, talks extensively about this epiphanic moment where people realize all the stuff that's gone wrong with their life and how shitty everything is, this is a collection for you. I know I sound like, like an asshole, but I'm not saying it condescendingly in any way. It's a great collection. Maybe it wasn't quite my genre, but you can have great fun with it. Stories for Nighttime and Some for the Day is a completely different sort of book. There are, 700 short stories in here. Not really, but there are really a shitload of short stories in here. Many of these are what you'd call flash fiction, and many of these have quirky and surreal elements to them, and many of these live or die depending on whether you're fascinated by the surreal element in this collection. So that, for instance, some children exploring an abandoned tunnel that looks like the tunnel in the classic Anthony Brown picture book, The Tunnel, turn out to, turn into sort of monstrous things. And that's a fascinating scene, and that's pretty much it. Most of the stories in this collection have that kind of feel. They are based on that kind of surreal atmosphere. Some of these are Kafkaesque. Some of these, you can use other fancy adjectives to describe them. Again, it's a great collection. I do feel like some of the stories have much more of a plot to them, and for that reason are so much better than the others. But if you are into that kind of surreal and quirky literature and fiction, if you're into flash fiction in general, the book for you. It's amazing. Finally, I'll conclude with a book for children, because, they are the future. Flora and Ulysses by DiCamillo, an amazing novel illustrated by the talented K.G. Campbell, and it's filled with amazing illustrations, and sometimes it turns almost into a comic book, and then it comes back to being a novel, and then you get some more comic book passages. It's amazing the way, the two forms interact in the novel, and the novel itself discusses the potential for understanding that comic books provide us with. and also the value of poetry in some ways. And it features a kind of superhero squirrel whose superpower is basically that he writes poetry. And it's clearly the work of someone who's passionate about a narrative, and it explores some theme such as, you know, emotional intelligence and the importance of, you know, getting in contact with your emotions, and the difficult relationship between parent and child, all within a hilarious and very light frame. It's great fun, it's another very light read, and it has a big heart. If you're into middle grade fiction, if you're interested in that kind of category, you should definitely check it out. Flora and Ulysses, I think, won some awards too. I filmed this video basically because I thought it would make a little bit more sense than filming 5 very short reviews of these books. But if for whatever reason you'd like me to talk a little bit more about any of these books, ask me questions in the comments. I may film longer videos or whatever. In any case, these are 5 good books. If you're, you know, if the things I've mentioned excite you, you should check them out. I mean, I'd recommend any of these to the right reader. Let me know if you've read any of these writers and what you think about them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.